when you're racing out there and you crash and you go down, you got to get back up.
Hey there, this is Nate English again, covering the Vuelta with our very casual commentary and recaps of the stages. So today was going to be a really big day, finishing in the Tourmalet in France, but COVID prevented them from going across the border, so they had to reroute the stage and keep it entirely in Spain, and it was pretty exciting. I'm here with Gregory Kennedy again, and then we have Kirk Carlsen joining us. Kirk, you want to introduce yourself? You're, among the three of us, the most experienced and at one point the highest level rider of the three of us. Gregory's, amateur bike racer and pro cycling superfan. I don't know, Strava, aspiring Strava king of the mountains, and used to be pro bike racer. Tell us a brief bit about yourself, Kirk.
Yeah, so Nate and I go back quite a far ways, just since I think I moved here in 2010, and I looked on Strava when I first moved here, and I saw, who's this guy, Nate English? And then I think the other day I was actually looking at some old results, and I saw Mount Hood in 2012 or something like that, or even earlier when you were on Yahoo.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, maybe that was the first time that I really got to know who Nate English was. But yeah, I've been racing for quite a while. I retired in 2015. But yeah, had a lot of experience in Europe and in the United States doing quite a number of races. And yeah, happy to join.
Just real quick for fun, if you were going to recall like your 2 or 3 favorite races that you've done or performances that you've had, like wins that you had, or even if they're not wins, just like sometimes I feel like the things that I cherish the most out of my riding history like aren't what other people might pick as the obvious like favorites that I might have, What are your 2 or 3 favorite races or wins that you've had?
Oh, absolutely. I think Tour of Mexico was probably my favorite all-time race. We went down there. It was sort of early season. I think it was like 2009. But the race down there is super unpredictable. You've got, 160 guys. You don't really know who's there, who's on form. It's early. It's at high altitude. And a lot of the times we were racing and the stage would be 200 kilometers, but then we'd hit 20K to go at 200 kilometers, and be like, oh, crap, we've got 20 more K of climbing. You hit the bottom of the last climb and there's 20 more K left. And so, I don't know, I thought that was really interesting because even after the stages, you get on a bus and you get lost. You don't know where the hotel is. It was kind of exciting. You think of Mexico as this place where, I don't know what it's going to be like. Is the food going to be good? But you get out into the middle of nowhere in these little tribal villages and you're climbing these mountains and there's people out there. You're hitting the cobblestones, these little streets, and you're going up these massive climbs that go up to, 10, 11,000 feet. And it was back then when Alberto Simoni was racing. So he was out there and everyone was like, oh man, that's Simoni, you just won the Giro and you're going up climbs with him and it's like, oh, I could take this guy, So it was kind of fun. Winning the national championships was certainly memorable as a younger U23 rider. And I think last year, honestly, the thing that comes to mind was after I retired, I always wanted to win Nevada City. I said, okay, maybe I'll come out of retirement here for Nevada City. I kind of gained some form, and crashing in the final corner, which I've done a number of times, trying to win races. Sometimes you got to risk it coming through that final corner. But what stands out to me the most was, in the heat of the moment, looking back on that, crashing at the final corner of a race that you've really wanted to win and being able to get back up on the bike and finish was really important. So I think even when you see a lot of these guys, or those that you don't know, when you're racing out there and you crash and you go down, you got to get back up, which is totally different than a lot of the other sports that are out there. You crash, you get hurt, you're kind of like, oh,
you do a flop.
Cycling,
soccer,
you crash, and your first instinct is like, is my bike okay? Am I ready to go again?
So briefly, today's stage was going to be by far like the hardest, queen stage of the race. Everyone was looking forward to it, finishing on the Tourmalet. They had to shut that down. They did alternate stage, which has a big history because Froome was in the lead, but then he was on the ropes back in 2016. Contador and Quintana attacked, and Froome was on the ropes, and it was like an epic stage. It shook up the GC. So today they finished on this climb. It's a Cat 1 after a couple of intermediate climbs, but it set up the race for more of a strategic unfolding of the race. So who was everyone's picks going today? We know Greg is all about Ineos. He's just like all Ineos all the time. And they just won the Giro, so I guess it's not a bad pick at any moment in time.
Yeah. Well, they won the Giro today, and then Carapaz moved into the red jersey in the Vuelta, right? So I think I had the right pick after all. And Ineos has had a difficult year, so it's nice to see them finally pick up some wins. There's a nice little video too that Froome sent out today talking about how he was gonna do everything he could to ensure Richie got in the lead, and it looks like it happened.
Yeah, it was a good stage. Who did you pick for the stage? I know you thought that it was unpredictable, but
Yeah, I think at this stage in the Vuelta, it's really hard to determine who's going to win the stage. So I just went with Valverde because I really like him.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good pick. I feel like so far in the race, he hasn't shown quite the form that he would need to win today. But in general, like this type of stage was maybe good for him like a couple of years ago. I had thought that Chavez was a good shot, like an outsider for today, and like he would want it after having bike issues a couple days ago. Like he was really strong that day, but he wasn't able to be in the race because he was off the back of the front group. And then I thought Roglic would keep the lead, but yeah, he barely missed out. He was in a little bit of trouble in the last few K. What about you, Kirk? Who were you picking going into the stage?
Yeah, I think honestly, looking on the paper and the description of the course, I was expecting a breakaway to sort of stick it, but and perhaps even Roglic give the jersey away because we're still in the first week. But what really surprised me was that the breakaway ended up being so big, because a lot of times you have those drivers and then you have passengers, and then the drivers get pissed off at the passengers, and then they stop working. So I thought that it would be a good day for a smaller breakaway, and then perhaps someone.
You're thinking like 8 to 12 guys, maybe.
Yeah, and then someone going maybe over the second to last climb, or even that first stair stepper climb with 30K to go.
Yeah.
Sort of kind of stick it from there. But once I saw the breakaway sort of form, I thought Woods probably had the upper hand there.
Yeah, Woods rode really strong. It's nice seeing him come back after crashing early in the race. Like he was taken out of contention right off the bat because he crashed on stage 1. But it's nice that he's not too hurt and he's riding strong. So briefly, I think like 20 or 30K in, the break finally got established. It sounded like it was pretty hard to get into the break, but finally it sorted itself out, and there was like 24 guys, and a number of good riders were up there. Izagirre was the highest placed GC rider, but he was like over 3 minutes back. I think he was like, I don't know, around 30th in GC going into the stage. So he's clearly strong, and he and several others were clearly going for the stage win. But obviously it just comes down to who's strongest at the end and whether or not they were given enough leash. After a couple days ago, they like let the break have no more than 2 minutes. It was kind of interesting to see that they just let the break get a huge gap early on, and then they held it around 3 minutes for a while. I think they were just keeping an eye on the GC and trying to minimize their work, but it looked like Jumbo wasn't quite in total control today. It looked like they were a little bit tired or just on the back foot. And also pretty key today, the profile was tough, but also it was cold and wet for much of the stage. So I feel like that played a big role and is going to affect different riders pretty differently. But yeah, it came down. Izagirre won off the front of what was left of the break. Woods won the sprint a few seconds behind for second, and the GC shook up a little bit. I'll bring up an image, but Carapaz took over the GC. Hugh Carthy's in second at 18 seconds. Dan Martin's in third at 20 seconds. Roglic is in fourth at 30 seconds. And Enric Mas is just over a minute back in fifth. I think we briefly already touched on this, but what was like the most surprising or exciting feature of today for each of you? You were surprised to see a big break go and have it unfold a little differently.
At the end of the day, what's really difficult to judge is the weather. People react very differently when it's cold and wet. And you see when you're wearing those jackets, those rain jackets, you know, you might be warm and dry, but you're sort of balancing, okay, how much heat am I putting off underneath this thing? So you actually get really dehydrated. So, you know, before hitting that last climb, it was sort of difficult to judge because you get guys that are really skinny, and then you get guys that are a little bit thicker that might be able to weather the rain a little bit more. So at the bottom of that climb, if you're a little bit dehydrated or you're a little bit overheated, or even if you're cold, it could really affect you going up to the summit. So really what was most surprising to me was seeing Hugh Carthy, who is really lean, be able to stick it with Carapaz, because generally those lighter riders, and I was expecting Roglic to sort of have a little bit more because he's not the skinniest guy, but you know, I think he definitely, you saw he was affected by the weather, but he definitely limited his losses today, I think, honestly. The other thing that really surprised me was how much Jumbo kind of fell apart there. I think they rode pretty hard most of the day, which might not been of benefit to them when they look back on it, because they didn't have anyone left for Roglic when sort of the stuff hit the fan. So so I think those little things sort of materialized, but Roglic definitely did a good job sort of minimizing the loss.
I think dead on that Jumbo seemed to shoot all their bullets too early, and like we all seem to agree that they kind of came out really strong too in this race, right? And Roglic already appears tired. I also thought the descending was insane in the rain. You could see, I think it was Izagirre going through a few turns where he was clearly avoiding any of the white lines and paint. Was really worried about crashing, and it was a long descent, and they were going pretty fast. I thought the aggressive riding in the rain was pretty wild. It was exciting to watch. I'm glad that there wasn't any significant crashes, right? We've seen some pretty bad ones.
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting too. I don't know how many of the riders got a chance to like really travel and like recon the courses, but if any of them that live in Spain or live in France or were really targeting this race and had the chance to travel like after travel restrictions opened up, like they would have been reconning the original course, if anything. And so like nobody was checking out this course, and there's probably not a lot of guys who would be familiar with these roads. Maybe a few of them that raced back in 2016 or that just live near there. But it's interesting that it's new for everyone at the last second that they change it, you know? Kirk, you're totally right. I feel like the weather just makes everything so much more volatile. Like it's a weekend, people are tired, everyone handles week after week of racing differently. But I feel like the weather, it's like, some guys overheat 3.5 hours in, they're like going up the last like 5 or 10K. And it's like, there's a lot of intensity. So it's easy to either get cold because they're underdressed or get overheated and dehydrated and overlook that because it is such a short stage. What do you think is going to go down the rest of the race? Like if you were going to pick a GC at the end of the race based on how things have gone so far.
Where you go, Curry? Everyone knows mine.
Yeah. Well, what about the rest of the podium? Because there's like 5 guys that are all like up there, but who knows? Like maybe Roglic explodes, or maybe he can take it back. Who knows?
I think for me, my personal opinion is that this was probably Rolic's worst day. And I think, you know, having
by the end will have been his worst day.
Yeah. So I think that's behind him. He only lost, 30 seconds to Carapaz. He definitely has the team. So, you know, I think he's going to be more motivated now, especially after the Tour loss. And certainly he has the ability. Today was, like you said, really volatile, the rain, etc. So, you know, if he can get that past him, if his team can regroup and sort of look at what happened today and say, okay, some of the difficulties that we had to overcome today, what are we going to do differently now? We don't have the race lead, so we're not on the front all the time. So I think Roglic is definitely still probably the guy to beat. You know, Carapaz, certainly a day like today, you got to expect in the rain that he's going to be firing on all cylinders. So, you know, he definitely took advantage of it, but if today was his one day to take advantage and he only gained 30 seconds, it's going to be really hard to kind of keep it rolling.
Yeah. Totally. It is nice for Jumbo that after the first week in the lead, now they don't have to protect it in the same way, so they can like be up there, but it's not on them to control everything like they have been trying to. It was too bad that Kuss got dropped and wasn't up there. I think Bennett was the last teammate that Roglic had up the last like 3 or 4K. I was kind of hoping that they would be up there. I have like a dog fight going on right next to me. I'll have to edit out that interruption. Charlie, come here. But yeah, so I think I'll probably wrap it up. Is there anything else that we wanted to, I don't know, comment on that was like exciting or interesting, or any like
another thing that was,
things? Yeah,
was two things tactically which were quite interesting. Was Israeli Startup Nation shouldn't have been riding the front, in my opinion. They had 1 or 2 guys up there, and quite honestly, you don't have the team to be doing that. You know, Dan Martin was second overall, okay, but hey, if Jumbo wants to win this race, it's on them.
Yeah.
Right? Don't go to the front because you have a guy up in GC and you feel the responsibility, because at the end of the day, too many times teams feel the responsibility of doing work, and you know, Jumbo's just going to take advantage of it, or the leader's just going to take advantage of it. The other thing, certainly, which tactically was really good, was on these wet descents, right? You know, going down these mountains, especially the ones that you don't know, it's really advantageous to go down in the front. And you saw Ineos come over the top of the climb, the second to last climb, hit the front, and then took advantage of it, right, and split the field. So I think those are the moments, especially in the rain, where you're sitting on the wheel, but you're afraid because you're trusting the people in front of you, you know. But if you're in the front, you know, 1 or 2 guys, you have everything. You have the road. You have the ability to move away if something happens. You've got a lot more flexibility. So I thought that was pretty smart by Ineos to kind of hit the front. And you'll see in these big races where, you know, you're coming over the top of these big mountains, and a team just goes boom right over the top because they're the ones that want to go down the hill. So, and then some other guys are like, oh, it's time to put on a jacket, you know, take my time. I've made it over the climb. I can relax. But really, the descents sometimes are the most difficult, and you'll find, especially after the descent, if you hit another climb, those guys in the front aren't slowing down, you know. So if you're at the back, those guys have already hit the climb, and you're a minute down at that point, you know, sometimes. So the reality is it's really important, especially in days like today, in the weather, and then you have a second climb right after the first one, to make sure and ensure that your team is in the front and that you're comfortable going down the hill, because, you know, the dynamics of that course.
Yeah. I feel like your thoughts about Martin not having his team do any work was like, I was excited to see him win a race and win the stage earlier, and he's clearly in good form. But I was thinking, it's like, that's great. He should just sit back and let all the other teams do all the work and just try to like hover near the front and not take the, like, if he has the opportunity, he should like win and take the lead, but do as little as possible and just like be lurking, because like the other teams have more depth and can try to control the race, and he should take advantage of that and not waste his team's energy, like, I don't know, making a showing just because he's high on the GC. I feel like that's a funny thing that like, a lot of people feel like they have to take up the mantle of like showing that they're strong, or like showing that they care about the GC because they have somebody in second or third that they want to take over, or like a weaker team that has somebody in the lead. Like they'll do a lot of work when it's like they should not be doing that. They should save it so that they have a chance to maybe be be there at the end, you know. It was interesting seeing that. I feel like you see that also just like with younger individuals, sometimes like going too hard in the first week when they should just be sitting in. So like I feel like Hugh Carthy was one of the big highlights for me today, seeing that he was able to be up there when he was like got gapped off a couple times on the earlier stages, but he was still like fighting to be up in contention. So it'll be fun to see if he can hang in there throughout the race and finish on the podium. Maybe I feel like for him that would be a phenomenal result, and for EF, like I feel like that would be a great result for them given their team at the race here. But anyway, any more parting thoughts, Gregory? We good?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think you guys have some great insights. Like, you know, with the top 4 people in GC now, everyone else is a minute or more behind, right?
So anything can happen. That's the fun.
Yeah,
The race could just blow up.
And the weather will probably continue. It's in the north of Spain. They don't go to the south at all.
And it's so late in the year. Like, they're dealing with cold instead of like 110-degree weather like they would in the normal calendar. So
yeah,
kind of
like watching it's like no other Vuelta I've ever seen, right? There's not the incredible heat and the desert and the coast, right? You've got these things that look like almost like a race in northern Europe. So that'll be interesting, and I think that'll continue to influence the ride. I mean, maybe Roglic was just cold today and isn't used to it. Hard to believe because he was a ski jumper, so seems like winter sports would be his thing, but it definitely wasn't his day.
Cool. Well, thanks for being on, Kirk. I really appreciate it. I hope that was fun.
Yeah.
And we'll see you later.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Later.